Thank you so much for inviting me to Poland. I was so happy when I landed here last night. I was less happy when I heard that my luggage landed in Gdansk. So if you think that her clothes look like they could have been bought here, they are. I had to go shopping this morning. Today I will speak to you about what you need to take into consideration when raising a bilingual child in your second language. On a daily basis, in the thing I do, as mentioned, I've written a book on raising bilingual children, and I run the website multilingualparenting.com. I have parents contacting me on a daily basis. I get lots of questions, and one of the questions that come more and often is the question, can I speak a language to my child which is not my mother tongue? And the answer is definitely yes, you can. I am in awe of this conference. I absolutely love it. I'm also in awe of all the linguistic knowledge that's in the room. Please keep in mind that I am not an academic. But what I am very passionate about languages and raising children to be able to speak more than language. In today's world, now more than ever, it is important that as many of us as possible can communicate across geographical and cultural borders. So the more bilingual children there are in the world, the better it is. So we'll talk to you about raising a bilingual child in a language which is not the parent's native one. You can call it second language, L2, whichever. And what to take into consideration before and during such an undertaking. So I understand there's been a lot of talk about bilingualism, so I won't speak that much about it. I will just mention the definition that I use, which I find useful in the work I do. It's by Professor François Grosjean. Bilinguals are those who use more than one language or dialect in their everyday lives. Note that there is no mention about being accent-free. I have an accent. I have lived 20 years in the UK. I have an accent. I have also spoken German for a long time. I have an accent in my German, and I think now, since I've been 20 years in the UK, I probably have an accent in my native Finnish and Swedish as well. I can still communicate because language is about communication. In this definition, it doesn't distinguish early or late bilinguals. It embraces both languages and dialects. It also makes no mention of the ability to read and write in all languages. I know that this might be a controversial thought, but for me, when I speak with parents, the most important thing is communication, because that is what language is there for. It's for communication. Yes, it's good if we can also read and write, but it's not something that parents have to kind of think, oh, if I want to raise a bilingual child, I have to be able to teach this reading and writing and everything. You can ask for help. Others can help you with that. Oh, yes. Okay, fine. We're in. Thank you. So, intentional bilingualism. The definition, fortunately, I wasn't able to be here this morning, so this might already have been discussed. So I will only quickly gloss over it. So it was introduced by Joseph Stefanik in '96 to describe parents who raise their children in a second language, replacing the somewhat negatively laden term artificial bilingualism. There's nothing artificial about speaking two languages. As Inés Jiménez has pointed out, exactly that. a child will communicate with its parent naturally in whatever language. There's nothing artificial about that. However, it must be pointed out that this does not mean that every other way of bringing up a bilingual child would be unintentional, although we now speak about intentional bilingualism. Passing on a minority language in a family bears many resemblances to intentional bilingualism. So why would you do that? Why would you choose to bring up a child in your second language? It brings with it an array of advantages which you are sure you are aware of. I will quickly go through them. And anyone who has learned or tried to learn a new language knows how much effort it requires. So if a parent can give a child an additional language, it's a wonderful gift for life, which will keep on giving from one generation to another. It will be there long after you're gone. And it's a great impact and something to keep in mind. I also know of parents whose own parents were migrants, but who then themselves started speaking the community language, so that became their strongest language, and in many cases maybe they didn't anymore speak the family language, and they used this approach to bring in their heritage language into their family. So, but you would have, as I said, you would have heard about the many benefits, so I will skim over them, starting with the obvious of being able to communicate with a wider network of people. It brings with it an increased awareness of a different culture. And the more we understand each other's cultures in the world, the better. Bilinguals have also been found to be generally more open-minded. Again, we need more open-mindedness in this world. And they're flexible in their thinking, as well as more sensitive about their communication. They can take the other person into consideration. An additional language gives you another viewpoint, another view of the world. There's ongoing research into how the process of switching between languages affects the executive control center of the brain and how this benefits our thinking. Some researchers have reported findings of improved memory and increased creativity among bilinguals. Bilingual children have been found to be better at weeding out distractions in noisy environments. That is, they have a better selective attention than their monolingual peers, and this may go some way against explaining why bilingual children on average do better at school. There's a recent study of 19,000 immigrant children in London, which found that immigrant children, although they lag behind when they start school, mainly due to the language, very quickly they overtake their monolingual peers, including in English. Knowing another language increases one's metalinguistic awareness. Bilingual children can at an early age separate a concept from the word for it. For a monolingual child, the word ball and the ball itself is one. It's one thing. They can't think of the ball and the name for it. While a bilingual child, because a child knows that there are two different words, they have the concept of a ball and then they have two different names for it. Knowing another language will make it easier to learn more languages. And of course, the more languages you know, the more attractive you are on the employment market. One must, however, also be wary when reading about the advantages of bilingualism, because as there seems to be a publication bias for articles that emphasize the positives. So what are the disadvantages about bilingualism? Well, none really. It may take a bit longer for a bilingual to find the right word, because you have to kind of flick through all the languages, because all your languages are trying to come through all the time. I have Finnish and Swedish and German fighting in the background when I'm speaking. And when it comes to children, the often quoted delay for bilingual children is more usually a difference in the order how the children learn, and older research were done using inappropriate testing methods, where bilingual children were assessed using criteria developed for monolingual children. When you raise a child in a language which is not your native one, people will question your decision, and it's important to be aware of all the different myths. As mentioned, there is language bilingualism does not cause a language delay. Your child does not need to be linguistically talented, whatever that means. It's not confusing for a child. I find it's funny how often people still claim that bilingualism causes confusion. We would have a lot, more than half of the population of the world would be confused if bilingualism did actually cause confusion. And there are no languages that are easier than others for children. They will just learn what they're spoken to. They often quoted 6 or 7 being the cutoff date from before you have to learn a language is also a myth. What is true that a child might get a native-like accent if they learn it before that. People say that mixing, code switching is bad. No, that's the normal life of a bilingual. When a bilingual speaks with somebody else who knows the same languages, the natural way is to throw in words from the other language, because that other word just fits better. And there are strict rules. It's not random. There are strict rules how we do it. And then the one about children being sponges. Children do learn. It might sometimes feel like magic, and when a child cries, it does feel like magic. But what happens when you think, well, they just learned? Because the circumstances were right. That's why they learned. They are not, you can't just put a child in front of a telly and hope that it will learn the language. It doesn't work like that. So what are the considerations then to take into, to think about before embarking on this journey? First of all, I will go through all of these on the next pages, paragraphs. A parent will be the child's main source of exposure to the second language, the child's target language, as I call it. So the parent's fluency in the language is important, but one should remember that a child does not learn a language overnight. A parent also has time to improve his or her own fluency while the child is growing up. What to specifically consider is whether a parent is fluent in all language domains. Being able to discuss intricate linguistic phenomena in a second language does not equate to knowing how to speak baby talk or sing a lullaby. Not to mention about making animal sounds, because they are different. You wouldn't think that, but they are different in every language. But there are good YouTube videos on that to find out how it sounds in Polish and Swedish and any language. If a parent has learned the second language a while ago, but has spoken mainly with others who also speak it as a second language, is it still up to date with the language currently spoken? And And speaking a language to one's child is very different from speaking it with colleagues or other adults. So I would also always recommend trying it out. Speak it to a child, see how it feels. As the child grows, the topics will change. Will the parent have time to work on his or her own language skills? We've heard about language and culture being entwined, and that is truly something that needs to be taken into consideration. Language is so much more than a means of communication. And children who grow up with more than one language should be supported in not only learning the languages, but also understanding the cultures of their languages. Therefore, the parents' knowledge of the culture is vital. Parents should be familiar with the traditions and the customs of the culture, in addition to the cultural references in the language itself. To take an example, it's not enough that children know how to speak about the different meal times in their target language. They should also know when the meals are eaten, what foods are served, what customs are practiced, whether people sit in a certain order at the table, whether it is polite or impolite to leave food on your plate, and so on. So it's so much more than just language. The emotional connection of the parent to the second language. Being able to speak more than language is a great gift, but it cannot be compared to the importance of a close connection between a parent and a child. Therefore, parents deciding to go down the intentional bilingualism route not only need to be confident about their linguistic and cultural competency, but also have a close emotional connection to the language they're going to speak. What about certain situations? Will a parent turn back into the native language? Well, they can, and this will not throw the project off track. It's fine. It doesn't mean that you have to be 100% all the time, because no one is. Parents do need to be aware that it will initially feel very strange to speak a second language to a child. But this is something that most parents that I have spoken to, they have quickly been able to overcome. Initially, it is difficult. It's a long-term commitment. It's not something to be decided on, okay, let's do that sounds fun. But you have to really think about it. And parents should be clear about the implications, their motives, and their goals. It will require more investment both in time and in money. However, we need to keep in mind that investing in spending more time with your child, that can only be a good thing. Extra money will be needed for the necessary resources, books, children's programs, other materials, and visits to places where the child can be immersed in the language, in the target language. It's a commitment because you should try to be as consistent as possible. It is not an easy thing to do. In addition to being consistent, they should also create an environment where the child feels that there's a need for the language and that they also want, because when the need is there and the want comes from inside a child, then that's when the success rate is the highest. Children are very pragmatic. As soon as they see no point, then they don't do it. Doesn't matter what we say. And we have to see it from the children's point. We can't tell them, well, this is good for you. I know it's good for you. It will be good for the future. That doesn't fly with children. It's not how it works. And when to start? The sooner the better is the mantra. Most parents decide this already before the birth, and that's good because then you can practice with the bump, speak the language to the bump. But it can be started at any point really. It's just that the approach needs to be different depending on the age of the child. The family support is crucial for success, for the success. It's a big commitment, and the parents need all the support they can. Both parents should agree about the approach, and also if there are elder siblings, they should be made part of the decision process. No one in the family should feel that they are being excluded by the decision. Parents are the ones to make the final decision about their children's linguistic upbringing, but it's recommended to also inform grandparents and other extended family members about it. By discussing any concerns in advance, it is possible to proactively tackle any problems. For example, grandparents worrying that they will not be able to speak with their grandchildren. Next, I will speak about which family language strategy you should use if you want to use intentional bilingualism. The choice depends on whether one or both parents will use the second language and how old the child is. If only one parent will speak a second language to the child, the natural choice is the one parent, one language approach, sometimes also called one person, one language. In this case, it's the mother who speaks the second language and the father the first language, the both parents' first language. The first language is normally also the language of the environment, so it's important. It is important that the mother stays consistent in this case. If both parents decide to do this, you could use, I call it target language at home. It's a variation of the minority language at home. So both parents speak the target language at home, and okay, it's jumped around a bit. And then the other language comes from the community. The children will learn the community language from extended family members, nannies, or when they start nursery or even school. For this approach, the parents will need support from the extended family and be strongly committed themselves, because their decision will be questioned. This is, however, the strategy which will have the highest success rate, as the children's target language is always spoken in the home. Next, okay, it seems to be going by itself, sorry. So the next one is time and place, where parents choose both or one, here is both, it could be one only, a certain time or a certain situation or certain activity when they use a language. This is best used when you have an older child, if you want to start this approach, because you can't just suddenly switch to a completely different language. I know how difficult switching is, because I did it with my daughter when she was 5, and I could never have done it without a kitten that spoke only one language. You can find that on my blog if you want to read about it. So these parents speak one language during the week and the other one during the weekend. I've got a very close blogger friend. She is Hispanic American who married a French guy. They live in France. He speaks French. She speaks English for 2 weeks, then switches to Spanish for 2 weeks. And she's done this since the children were born. Her eldest is now 15, and they have all grown up to speak 3 languages. And it works. And the children are the ones who are very strict about it. So if she speaks the wrong language during a certain week, they will tell her off. And it works. Where we go. So resources. I Oh no, these are the challenges. Okay, I will skip the one about resources. I have a lot of resources on my site where you can find, but the important thing is trying to find as many native speakers as possible for your child to speak with, if possible other native speaking children, because children are really good at teaching each other, and they motivate each other. Amongst the challenges that parents have to or will encounter in most cases, biggest one is others' attitude. Parents are the ones to decide, and others' opinions shouldn't really matter. This is however not how it goes in real life. For parents, it's important to be prepared to answer doubts and questions from both relatives and friends, and even strangers who comment on their family's language choices. Just like with general parenting advice, everyone suddenly seemed to become an expert in speaking languages to a child. So that's why it's so important to know the facts, know the myths, and be prepared with all of that information, so you know where you are, and you can, if need be, defend your decision, which I don't feel you'd have to. For naysayers and doubters, my recommendation is to answer, "Thank you for your opinion," smile, and move on. Parents should not feel that they have to defend their decision. Will a child have an accent? Yes, child will have an accent if the parent has an accent. So what? I like the quote that says, "You should respect people who speak with an accent. They probably know one more language than you do." And then the consistency is always a challenge for parents. So you have to kind of be very focused when you embark on this journey. Older children might themselves question your decisions, or perhaps it comes from peers. So, "Mom, why aren't you speaking Polish to me? Why are you speaking French or English or whatever?" So it's good to be prepared for those questions. And it's good to have an explanation, and don't come with adult reasoning. Come with what works for the child, and so the child understands and appreciates it. Many parents have mentioned that the most difficult one is when children start nursery or school, because that's when the situation changes. The time spent in the community language environment increases significantly. Children get used to only speaking the community language for a big part of the day, so it's no surprise when they continue using it when they come home. Something fun, exciting, upsetting, or worrying might have happened during a school day, and it is so much easier for the child to tell the parent about it in the language it actually happened. My advice is to allow children to let the steam off, let them talk, don't interrupt them. I'm speaking from experience. My now adult daughter told me that she was so annoyed with me when I insisted that she should tell me in Swedish when she came home from school, and she just wanted to tell me something, and I asked her to speak Swedish. So I know, I hope others can learn from my mistakes. Secondly, nursery or school means more friends, most of whom may only speak the majority language. And the child will want to be just like everybody else. Speaking a different language may not fit in with this thought. With more friends often also comes peer pressure and expectation to be part of the group, and again, the target language may be on the losing end. Therefore, it's crucial that parents stay consistent in the language throughout this phase. Parents can prepare themselves and the children by practicing school-specific vocabulary in language before. So you have already discussed the things that might happen. So child knows the vocabulary for those situations. Thirdly, there is the thing about homework. It will be in the majority language, not in the language you speak at home. If parents need to give their child a hand, which language to use? Well, there is no simple answer to that. It doesn't make sense to try to use the target language in all situations. For example, spelling or specific counting systems in maths. It can't be translated. But I would still encourage parents to ask the child to describe a task in other topics, in other subjects, in the target language, because this will make the child rethink the issue at hand. When we translate something into another language, we process the topic in much more details than if we just retell it in the same words as somebody else has used. I noticed this especially with my youngest daughter, when she described to me what she needed help with, and she said, all right, no, okay, I can do this myself. And then she wandered away once she had explained it to me. Quickly, just a few do's and don'ts. So make it a habit. Do make it a habit. Use child-directed speech. So make sure that you speak directly with a child. If you have more than one child, make sure you speak to the middle child as well. Make sure you speak to the quiet child. Make sure when you speak just to everybody, it's not as effective when you speak to one person only, one child. So that's a good thought to have in mind. Create the need for the language, visit, read books, engage. And when you read a book, at some point, put the book down and say, what do you think will happen next? Encourage the child to use their imagination and to creatively use their own language. There's always some don'ts, of course. Never demand, motivate. Never criticize or make fun of. Let's say the child had said something funny. Don't even speak about it when the child is not there. It might come back to the child through somewhere else. It's better, just don't do it. Just be encouraging and praising. Don't expect perfection. Perfection will come from the willingness to speak and the need to speak and the continuous use of the language. So don't set the target too high for the child. Just coach it up and empower it and motivate it. Instead of correcting, I would say give an alternative. Don't say that was wrong. Just say the sentence in a way that how you would say it. And never compare a child to another child. Children are different. My elder daughter spoke 2 languages when she wasn't 2 yet, and my younger one didn't say a comprehensible sentence when she was 3. They both now adults and are fluent in 3 respective 4 languages. Well, let's finish with some positives. Give positive feedback. Create engaging incentives. That's again the make the children want to speak it. Make it fun. And be a great role model. Use your languages. Don't shy back from or don't switch to the majority language. Use it whenever you can. Show your children what a great thing it is to be bilingual. And when you do all this, you will raise a proud bilingual child. Thank you very much for, at the end of this long day, that you're here listening to me. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. please, if you have any questions, I would be happy to discuss and answer.